This is after shareholders approved the brewer's $104 billion takeover by the larger rival Anheuser-Busch InBev. The SABMiller meeting of shareholders held in London today followed a vote earlier by AB InBev shareholders themselves, both approving the deal, which has been about a year in the making. The deal is expected to be finalised in the next 2 weeks or so, by October the 10th. It's expected to boost AB InBev's prospects in developing markets in Africa and China, where an SABMiller joint venture produces Snow. Now, Snow is the world's best-selling beer by volume. AB InBev has already won all the regulatory clearance it needs, including here in South Africa. It's also gained backing from China in July and the EU in May. Well, to discuss, we're joined by Catherine Drew in London, our correspondent there. Catherine, was this an emphatic yes for the deal today?
Yes, it really was. The vote was approved by over 95% of the shareholders who voted, which was well over 70%. So yes, this was an emphatic yes. There has been some debate and speculation about this in the weeks and days running up to this, because we do know that some shareholders were very unhappy. The two largest shareholders, the tobacco firm Altria and Bevco, had got this separate partial share deal, and that was causing a great deal of unhappiness. Some investors saying that not only was this unfair, but they had basically undervalued SABMiller, and the board of SABMiller had admitted that this £45 a share that they'd got was basically at the lower end. So this was an emphatic yes, but still some disgruntled people this morning, and of course some people will lose their jobs.
Let's talk about those job losses. I understand we have protections in place here in South Africa. That was part of the regulatory, the competitions process that went ahead. But around the world, what are we looking at?
Well, what we're looking at is roughly a 3% anticipated loss of jobs from the combined workforce. That accounts for about 5,500 jobs. Now, this perhaps won't be the beer makers, the people actually making the beer and distributing the beer, but of course there will be a lot of crossover with the corporate sectors. I spoke to a rather sad PR person today, and he will lose his job. So obviously many people in the London headquarters will be going because they won't be necessary. SABMiller will no longer exist. So it'll be those type of jobs which disappear. And we know from history that AB InBev, with its various takeovers, have come in. They've slimmed down operations. So obviously they'll be looking for efficiencies.
What happens from now?
What happens from now? Well, as you mentioned, the stock will be delisted here in London and in Johannesburg on the 5th of October. And that deal will be, the merger will be complete by the 10th of October. And the new entity will be trading again in Brussels with a secondary listing in Johannesburg. So much stays the same except for that historic name change, which you were mentioning. Of course, the breweries will still be there. Many of the people will still be there, but under a different name, AB InBev.
And this passed all those regulatory hurdles, the competition authority. Is the idea, Catherine, that there won't be any major loss in competition in the world? And I guess for beer drinkers, everything stays the same. You still get your same brands on the shelves.
Well, you do get your same brands, but some drinks industry analysts have been wondering what the future holds, whether some of those brands might disappear. It will be such a large industry player. When the companies combine, they will dominate about 27% of the beer industry market. So if you were having 3 or 4 beers, just randomly, at least one of those would be an AB InBev beer. So there's a lot of speculation, of course, about where AB InBev will go, but obviously the big prize was SABMiller, with the access into those African markets. Beer consumption expected to rise in Africa as populations grow, as they mature, as incomes rise. So certainly that was the big prize. And of course Latin America as well. This, as AB InBev says, is truly a global deal, and they have cemented this globally.
All right, thank you so much, Catherine Drew, live for us from London on this historic day when it comes to mergers and acquisitions in the world. Shareholders saying cheers. Well, a bit of good news on the economic front now. South Africa has moved up 2 notches